House of Representatives tasks federal government to implement carbon credit policy to mitigate the effects of climate change. House recommends forensic audit of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. And poor electricity supply. House urges federal government to settle lingering issues with discoms. It is now barely 2 weeks to the end of the 9th House of Representatives, and expectedly, leadership of the 10th House is a dominant issue in the media. However, you and your reps will be examining one of the major legislations that shaped the 9th House. Thank you for joining us again on You and Your Reps. I am Victor, as welcome to the program. The Minority Caucus of the House of Representatives says it is still consulting to form alliance on its choice for the position of presiding officers in the 10th Assembly. At the 4th General Session of the caucus, it stressed that it is yet to decide who to pitch tent with among those contesting for the position of Speaker.
If we must get it right, if we must do the right thing, we need to interact with our leaders in our constituency. We need to interact with our colleagues from the various states. We need to interact with our party stakeholders and all that in arriving at a decision that will be one for us.
Each and every one of us, we hold the responsibility of brotherhood, and in brotherhood for the 10th National Assembly, we all shall.
The caucus has, however, appointed states and zonal coordinators to further reach out to stakeholders at the party level to ensure emergence of a credible and transparent leadership that would not compromise the mandate of citizens. The House of Representatives recommends a forensic audit of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited in order to unravel discrepancies in the importation and supply of premium motor spirit. Now this, the House says, has become necessary to ascertain the daily average volume of PMS consumed in Nigeria.
The recommendation was part of the 4 considered and adopted by the House as submitted by its ad hoc committee set up to find out how much of petrol is consumed daily in Nigeria. This was to identify loopholes in the subsidy regime costing the country trillions of naira. The committee explains that in the course of the assignment, it realized that there was no available data to conclusively arrive at the volume of PMS consumed on daily basis.
We look at the area of supply, we look at the area of distribution, we look at the area of storage. What NNPC will give you as the supply of petroleum products, particularly PMS to the country, is different from what the authority gives, and is also different from what Nigerian Navy gives. When we ask the Accountant General to tell us the amount that the country pays for subsidy, the Accountant General could not give us an answer.
Recommendation 2, expedite the full implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act. Carried.
The House has considered and approved federal government's request to extend the implementation of the capital components of the 2022 appropriation and the 2022 supplementary budget.
To extend the implementation of the capital aspect of the Appropriation Act 2022 from 30 June 2023 to 31st December 2023, and for related matters standing in the name of the House Leader.
The House passed 12 bills after third reading. Among them, bill to establish National Youth Service Corps Trust Fund and that of Nigeria Education Loan Fund, which seeks provision of interest-free loans to indigent Nigerians to access higher education.
And the federal government, through the Transmission Company of Nigeria, must find ways of settling lingering issues which led to disconnection of electricity distribution companies from the national grid. House members noted that the disconnection which is related to payments default on the part of DISCOs to the TSN is affecting electricity supply in the country.
The issue was raised as a matter of urgent national importance by Uime Idem, stating that majority of the DISCOs have not complied fully with the operational codes and guidelines.
Virtually all the distribution companies of Nigeria are defaulting in one area or the other to the detriment of the consumers, ranging from non-compliance to the market rules with respect to payment of their outstanding invoices, posting of adequate bank guarantees, and forwarding of their active power purchase agreements.
Meanwhile, the House has adopted the report of the Conference Committee on the Electric Power Bill, which seeks to strengthen federal government's power sector reform efforts.
Provide for comprehensive legal and institutional framework for the power sector in Nigeria in the areas of electricity generation, transmission system operation, distribution, supply, trading, enforcement of consumer rights and obligations, provide for a holistic integrated resource plan and policy that recognize all sorts of generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity, including the integration of renewable energy to Nigerian energy mix and attract investment.
The motion from Sada Soli requesting the absorption of students evacuated from Sudan into Nigerian universities was adopted.
Consider the quota system imposed on certain courses such as law and medicine to waive them for the students concerned in order to enable them continue with their programs pending the resolution of the Sudan crisis.
The House will forward to Mr. President for assent the Constitution Alteration Bill No. 46 on membership of National Security Council having met requirements.
Membership of the National Security Council to include presiding officers of the National Assembly and 58 independent candidacy 2023.
Other features at plenary include the second reading of bill to establish Nigeria Security Academy in Bichi, Kano State, sponsored by Sani Bala, and bill to enact Code of Conduct Bureau and Tribunal. The report from House Committee on AIDS, Loans and Debt Management on refunds to Borno and Plateau States for projects executed was approved.
The House of Representatives has asked the federal government to implement the carbon credit policy as part of efforts to mitigate the effect of climate change. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali tells us that the implementation will ensure that industries do not exceed emissions threshold.
The carbon credit policy is a mechanism put in place to reward industries for reducing emissions, while those that exceed set limits are sanctioned. The House, in support of the motion from Sam Unigbo, suggested collaboration between the National Council on Climate Change and other concerned ministries to formulate an action plan that is consistent with provisions of the Climate Change Act to implement the policy.
The devastating impact of climate change in the world, particularly in Nigeria, with desertification, that the Federal Ministry of Environment shall set carbon budget for Nigeria to keep average increases in global temperature within 2 degrees Celsius.
Bills that pass second reading include Food Vendors Registration Council Establishment Bill from House Chief Whip Mohammed Sahir Monguno.
With the responsibility of advancing the registration, training and mode of practice of raw and cooked food vending business to prevent double collection taxation on members of the council by unauthorized bodies in Nigeria and for related matters.
The National Fertilizer and Agricultural Pesticide Control Bill, which seeks to regulate the manufacture, importation, sales and distribution of the product, also passed second reading. 9 bills were read for the third time and passed. Among them is the bill seeking the establishment of Nigerian Nuclear Regulatory Authority.
Indeed, the 9th House of Representatives has been able to push through some landmark legislations which have now become acts of parliament. One of them is the climate change law. You and your reps spoke with sponsor of the bill, Representatives Samuel Onwibo, on the implementation of the law so far.
The bill had suffered series of setbacks from the 6th Assembly to the 7th Assembly, and then to the 8th Assembly when I first sponsored the bill, and then at the end of the day, it was denied assent by Mr. President. And to the glory of God, I was re-elected. So, and shortly after returning, and all the other preliminaries about election of officers and all that. So I now sponsored the bill and eventually received presidential assent. As someone who comes from a rural community where I saw the impacts of climate change, when you discuss about the drying up of our springs, streams, sudden gully erosions within our areas. And then if you add that to my experience, when I worked for the US government, when I had calls maybe to move to different parts of the country, and I used to go to areas like Baga, Lake Chad, and all that, and it was all green. Then suddenly, the whole of all those areas started drying up. And then people who previously depended on the lake, maybe close to 30 million people, for the 4 countries, who depended on the lake for animal husbandry, fishing, and farming, they had nowhere to go. Some of them emptied into the cities and started adding to the challenges that we saw, talking about security-wise. So when you put all these factors together and then check also on what the international community, what they're doing, how they're moving and trying to leave others behind. So when you put these factors together, yes, these factors pushed me to sponsor the bill to ensure that we have a framework for a low, greenhouse gas emission, inclusive growth, and sustainable economic development for a nation, because it's not enough that you are developing, but then there are other challenges that are coming by way of negative impacts. So these factors, when you put them together, actually pushed me to sponsor the bill in the 8th Assembly and then sponsor it in the 9th Assembly. And I thank God that it was actually assented to, making it an act of the National Assembly of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We have made some progress, perhaps not exactly at the rate that one would have liked. But these are the teething problems that are associated with a massive organization, taking off. One, Mr. President has inaugurated the council, and they have also held their first meeting. And in addition to that, he has also appointed the Director General of the National Council on Climate Change, who is going to drive a lot of these things. And I'm aware that some people have also been either seconded or appointed to help in the takeoff. But I'm also aware that there are some provisions of the Act that require the response from the National Council and then the federal government 12 months after assent, like the set of the carbon budget and all that, the pilot carbon budget. Those were not, made or satisfied. And that was what prompted me to do a letter, sometime last year. I think that was around between June and July. I wrote a letter to 3 key players in this act. That's the Attorney General of the Federation. I also wrote to the SGF and to the Vice President, urging them to move, because this is an act of government. And if you don't meet up, if you fail to implement it, then you are going against your own law. So, but I'm happy that eventually we had a DG appointed, and then he's been working to be able to take up. So I think we are on that route, but there's need for more efforts to be put into it so that we are not, left behind in any form.
The word valedictory, in a general sense, has to do with farewell. In the legislature, what does a valedictory session entail? Now, this question was put to Chair of the House Committee on Rules and Business, Abubakar Fulata.
A lot of organizations, judges also do, at the expiration of a certain tenure, speeches highlighting achievements, shortcomings are made. In our case, the House Chairman Rules and Business will include in the order paper that on so date there will be a valedictory session of the Assembly before its formal dissolution by a letter of proclamation by Mr. President, in which case an entire session will be dedicated to valedictory as a valedictory session. Speaker will take stock of achievements and shortcomings of the Assembly before its final expiration.
A new government is now upon us. So you and your reps went to town to ask ordinary Nigerians what they expect from this government. Here's what we got.
I believe the incoming administration should prioritize more on education and also agriculture, and which will also enhance the growth of the economy, because I know Nigerians are more blessed, both in human and natural resources.
The employment of youth, I think they should work on that, because without the youth being employed, you see everything going wrong.
Each sector complements, each other. Look at the agricultural sector, there's nothing wrong about it. Look at the business environment. Look, is it the forex? Is it the unemployment level? Is it the insecurity in the land? So the thing needs a holistic approach.
They should give employment more focus, because mostly the youths these days are just roaming about, nothing doing, and education also should follow.
The incoming administration should prioritize every aspect of the economy, but key, you see, agriculture is crucial, not just for food sufficiency. We are able to export, and then the incoming administration too should focus on developing small and medium-scale enterprises, small businesses, because they are the backbone to every single economy.
The only way the teeming youth can be employed is by industrialization, nothing else.
As transition happens in both the executive and legislature, Chief Whip of the House of Representatives and Senator-elect Mohammed Monguno shares his thoughts on areas the incoming administration should focus on to get the economy ticking immediately.
I think the government should prioritize on the issue of the economy first. And on the issue of the economy, all hands must be on deck to diversify the Nigerian economy away from oil, from being a monolithic economy that depends on oil, to other sources of revenue. And that diversification, I envisaging a situation whereby the economy will give attention to the issue of agriculture, invest heavily on agriculture in tandem with the Maputo Declaration that urges all African countries to devote at least 10% of their budget to the agricultural sector. Nigeria up to now has not even attained 5% of its budget being devoted to agricultural sector. I'm making this argument against the background of the fact that agriculture contributes about, accounts for about 70% of our employment and 30% of our GDP. So as such an important sector, there is a need for government to invest heavily on that sector with a view to diversifying the economy away from oil. Then the other sector that we have a huge potential that remains unexploited is the issue of the solid mineral subsector. We have a lot of mineral resources that are not being exploited in this country. So there's a need for government to invest also on the solid mineral subsector so that sector can also bring about the much needed revenue that we can deploy for our infrastructure needs, and also will be a source of earning the much needed foreign exchange. And that will go a long way in conserving our own foreign exchange that we use to import other things. And then even the issue of debt that is now threatening to consume us. If we have diversified sources of revenue like agriculture, the solid mineral subsector, if properly exploited, the issue of taking debt will be a thing of the past because we have our own resources. There is no need for us to go and take foreign loans. And then the issue of security. Security is the primacy of governance. Even in the Constitution has clearly and unambiguously said that the primary purpose of government is their welfare and their security. Peace, order, and good governance. That is what government is supposed to guarantee. And that is the social contract that the people have with the government. So there is a need to pay a lot of attention to the security sector in terms of, particularly in terms of intelligence gathering, with a view to nipping in the bud all these issues of banditry, Boko Haram, and the issue of militancy in the south, and then the agitation in the southeast. So with proper intelligence, all these things will be nipped in the bud. Corruption has eaten so deep into our skin like a cancer worm. And one of the major problems that constitutes a cog in the wheel of our developmental aspirations is the issue of corruption. Then government should further look at the modus operandi of both the EFCC and the IPC, and then if there's any lacuna that inhibits their discharge of their functions to the latter, then I think an amendment should be brought to the National Assembly so that they can be able to be doing in the discharge of their statutory mandate of curbing corruption. And then I think government should also put in place mechanisms and machineries in motion that will make it very difficult for people to ab initio engage in corruption, block all loopholes that that people capitalize on to engage in various corrupt activities. I am foreseeing a situation whereby government immediately on assumption, not more than 2 weeks or 1 month, this government will appoint its cabinet so that without any delay, they will hit the ground running and deliver dividends of democracy to the doorsteps of the people. I think this government will set the pace in that direction so that they will hit the ground running. It's an advisory.
Well, let's hope Chief Whip hopes right. And that's you and your reps for this week. We thank you for watching. Next week promises a better package. I'm Victor Azu. Join us again.